Oh hey, didn't see you there. I was just enjoying a book. Speaking of books, you've just cracked the cover of part 2 of our interview with ghostwriter extraordinaire Ali Machate, founder of the Writer's Alley. How's that for wordplay? Today she and Thor cover the steps involved with coming up with and launching a book in a way that's best for you and your business. Next on the Peak Performers Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
What do you find? Do you find the majority of people are sitting down and typing out everything, or are they dictating it and having it transcribed?
When they write their books?
Yes.
That's a good question. I think there's probably a really good mix. I do like the transcription method, but there's a little bit of a word of caution there. If you are somebody who's very practiced at speaking and you're able to put together thoughts and phrases, really well and really articulately, then transcribing can be a great process for you. I mean, of course, you're going to have to clean it up a little. Your whatever you're speaking doesn't necessarily translate perfectly to the page, but it can be a really great way for people who are not used to writing to get that thought and that information out of their head and onto the page. The thing that I would caution people against, though, is trying to speak without having a structure in place. Like if you were going to just sit down, Thor, and flip on the recorder and talk for a few hours about executing without a plan, without an outline, you would probably end up with a lot of great content in a big jumbled mess. And it probably would not end up being something that ultimately would be a book draft. You'd have to do a lot more work. So again, that planning up front is really going to be key.
Every peak performer that has ever lived or will live does one thing extremely well. They know how to take their ideas and execute on them. Ideas and knowledge are not power, but the ability to execute on them, that is real power. If you consider yourself a peak performer and really want to take your game to the next level and truly master the science of execution, I would like to send you some information about our upcoming event, Business Execution Summit. Simply take your phone and text the word BESUMMIT, one word, to 41411. And I'll send you some additional information on how to master the most important skill you will ever acquire for your life or your business. Tell me some of the biggest mistakes other than that, not planning ahead, that would-be authors make.
I think a misalignment of expectations is often a big mistake. So you asked, a little bit about a traditional publisher, and I've kind of implied also that self-publishing, of course, is always an option. When you are trying to decide the best way to publish your book or the best way to get your book out to your target readers, you need to take a little time to educate yourself so that you can get your expectations in alignment. I've had people who have really great ideas and they have very successful businesses, but they haven't done the kinds of things that a traditional publisher would consider important parts of their platform, such as building a mailing list, having a really large social media following. And by large, I mean at least 10,000 followers and at least 10,000 people on a mailing list. Connections with high-profile individuals, whether that's celebrities or CEOs or big media personalities, other authors, especially best-selling authors, varies somewhat depending on the kind of book. But big publishers, especially the big five, the big national huge publishers, they proportionally want people with large national platforms. So even if you have an awesome idea and your business has been very successful and what you have going on has been enough to give you that kind of success in your niche, in your field, that doesn't mean it's going to be big enough for a national publisher. So you need to you sort of need to see where you are on the map and weigh all of these different pieces and understand that there are other factors that come into play. And also that, I always say that there's not one choice isn't better than the other. It's just a choice. So you can put the time in up front to build your audience. Let's say you could take a year and do a lot of guest blogging and really focus on your social media and do a lot of speaking and really build up a huge mailing list and then launch a book. And you could probably have a really big launch and maybe hit some bestseller lists. Or you can take that platform and then go to a publisher and say, yeah, look at all these readers I have waiting for my book. Or if you don't want to do that, maybe you publish the book first. Maybe you don't go to the traditional publisher because you don't have the platform yet, but you self-publish it instead. You don't have a huge launch because no one knows who you are, but you use the book and you use that to build your platform. You use that book to get the speaking gigs. You use that book to get the interviews, to get on the podcast, to get people to join your mailing list. And you have instead more of a long tail. You see not a burst of success at the outset, but a nice, slow, steady growth that becomes very profitable and sustainable and helps you boost your business to the next level.
Now, if you have the following, you have the social media following, the email list, is there any reason to self-publish as opposed to going to a publisher?
Sure. Again, it's not really about one being a better choice than the other. It's about factors. So some of those factors might be timeliness. If you publish with a traditional publisher, assuming everything happens fairly quickly, right? You get an agent, the agent sells it to a publisher, the publisher picks it up and wants to publish it pretty quickly. You're still talking about probably at least a year from the time that, the publisher picks up the book to the time that it actually comes out in print. It can be shorter, but most of the time it's not. So if you're writing about something that's very timely or trendy or like, if maybe you have a huge speaking opportunity coming up and you want to make sure you have the book in time for that, going the traditional route is probably not going to be right for you. Self-publishing is going to be much faster. It's going to give you a lot more control. You're going to be able to meet the timeline that you need to meet. Also, sometimes people are just very entrepreneurial. If you are someone who just, you get that building, you've built a business and you get that publishing a book is essentially launching a new business with a new product. And that's something that you enjoy. It's exciting to you. Self-publishing can be awesome because that's exactly what it is. It's a new entrepreneurial venture. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can be really challenged and you can do very, very well in that scenario as long as you understand that, like any business, you need to invest, you need to hire professionals, you need to do your market research, blood, sweat, and tears, all of that, et cetera.
Yeah, for entrepreneurs, outside of, next month is like, oh, wow, that's a long way away. How do I get it done now?
Right, exactly. And self-publishing can definitely be a great option for people who are in that boat. Now, I will say, as much as a fan as I am of self-publishing, and I think that the ability that people have to get more better books to market, even sometimes when it's something that a traditional publisher would not be interested in for a variety of reasons, I think that's a wonderful thing. But the ease with which and the quickness with which you can now bring a book to market is both a curse and a blessing, right? Because you have the opportunity to get a book out there really, really quick. I mean, you could quite literally sit down, write a book between now and tomorrow, upload it, and have it available as a Kindle ebook in 24 hours. But is that book going to be any good? Is it going to be something coherent? Is it going to be something that people are going to be happy spending their money on? Is it going to have a cover that really attracts people? Is it going to have content that reviewers will receive favorably and then post good reviews about to help you build buzz? Most of the time, no, not if you do it like that. So that's a great thing, but it is something also to be cautious of. And patience can really be a killer in this arena.
What about all the technical aspects? This ISBN number, the footnotes, who you give credit to. What about all that stuff? Where does someone find out what they can or can't do and how to do it correctly?
Well, you can find, luckily these days with the internet, you can find someone who's willing to do something for you almost all the time. You can find a lot of research available for free. Self-publishing is definitely not new at this point, and there have been many authors who have been doing it very successfully for a decade now. So there's a huge body of information available online, blogs, books even. So if you're an entrepreneurial spirit and you're willing to put in a little time and energy, you can get answers to almost anything you want. I mentioned earlier people like the book Sherpas and consultants, people who will help you create a publishing strategy. Those people exist. You can even hire people to do that for you. If you've written the whole book and you just don't want to deal with the production, you don't want to deal with registering the ISBN and the copyright. You don't want to deal with, setting up accounts with all the distribution channels. And, I don't want to understate this. It can be a lot of work to publish a book correctly. When you self-publish a book, you are quite literally becoming the publisher. So you are not just the author anymore. You're now wearing all the different hats of all the different departments that a publisher would have brought to this process: marketing, publicity, foreign rights, sub-rights, copy editing, design, layout, everything you have to do yourself. But you can hire people to do a lot of it. You can outsource a lot of that work.
Yeah, you had just lost all the entrepreneurs in the room. Just foreign rights, this right. It was like, whoa. Or hire somebody like yourself to help guide the process.
Absolutely. There are plenty of professionals out there. There's even a wonderful new thing that's evolved. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are aware of virtual assistants. It's become pretty commonplace for online entrepreneurs to have a virtual assistant these days. There has become a type of virtual assistant. They call themselves author assistants, and they are VAs who specialize in working with authors. There are a few programs out there that have certification programs to teach VAs specifically some of these more burdensome tasks of getting books set up and published specifically so they can go out and partner with authors who want to self-publish, who don't want to have to deal with all those little details.
Interesting. Well, now, will those VAs also help with some of the writing process, or are they just post-production?
They're mostly post-production. I mean, I couldn't say for sure. I haven't yet personally met somebody who has the editorial background to do it. That doesn't mean there aren't people out there, though.
Interesting. Now, are there any other mistakes that an author might make that are going to be really costly to them down the road? In other words, they're almost at the final editing point and they forgot to do something. And it's like, oops, forgot that one. Now it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more money to go back.
Well, there are a lot of mistakes. I'm trying to think of a big one that I can highlight. So we've already talked about it. We already talked about impatience. Definitely, that can be a big mistake. Rushing things, not thinking through the content, not choosing the right idea that lines up with your business goals or your goals for the book, not taking the time to think about structure and competition and how your book fits into the marketplace. These are all really important mistakes that can be costly. I think maybe one other mistake that I would mention, especially with self-publishing, is where authors put together a plan that's perhaps a little too ambitious because they just don't know what they're getting into until they're neck deep in it. I have a partner, for example, right now. I run an editorial team, and one of my editors has a client who contacted him in a panic because he set up all of these promotional events for this book and didn't leave himself much time. It's his first book. The editorial process ended up being much more time consuming than he anticipated because the book needed a lot more work than he anticipated, which is totally normal for your first book. And now he needs it proofread and designed and produced in about 10 days if he's going to be able to get books for this event that he's scheduled. So he's really crammed into a corner, and now what he's having to do is spend a lot more money paying people rush fees because many professionals, the best professionals, as I'm sure you can imagine, and probably a lot of your listeners are in the same boat themselves as experts, the best people are scheduled in advance. You can't just drop a project in the best people's lap and expect them to be able to deliver within 3 days. So he's now spending a lot more money, not to mention the stress of trying to coordinate all of these things very, very quickly because he just didn't give himself enough time.
Yeah, that's execution strategy number 72. Tell the world what you're going to do and then make it happen.
Yeah, right. And it's a real double-edged sword, because you want to be that kind of person. I mean, you want to put that stake in the ground and not let this project linger forever. I think it's more just that people really underestimate, especially for their first book or their first couple of books. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, and they just underestimate how much time it's going to take to get things ready and to get things into publishable shape.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
And that was Ali Machate, expert book doctor. Be on the lookout for part 3, where Ali describes how writing and launching a book can help establish or even pivot to help grow your business. That's next time on the Peak Performers Podcast. We'll see you at the top.